All right, we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another episode, guys. And today we are rounding out the defense positional breakdowns by talking about the safeties. Now, guys, obviously we've talked about every single position on the defense and the offense. So if you haven't yet, be sure to go check those out. But before we get into this episode and break down the safety position, just want to remind you guys this episode is presented by Prize Picks. So be sure to hop over to prizepicks.com or use our mobile app today and use the code BTJ when you sign up for a $100 deposit match. All right, Derek, let's talk about the safety room. I think the room that when you look at it, you probably have the most question marks out of any position on this team. I mean, really do think that's kind of the case when it comes to the safety room because there's questions with every single player in this room. I mean, literally every single player, there's a question about their long-term future with the Indianapolis Colts. And we're going to talk about that when it comes to the safety room. But before we dive into some individual guys, what are your thoughts overall on the Indianapolis Colts 2024 safety room as it stands right now?
Well, I will still sit here and say I think it's the one room in the entire team that I think needs more work than anything else. Despite the fact that I still have confidence in Julian Blackmon moving forward, the rest of the group I don't really have a lot of confidence in. So I really feel like we really need to try to be able to do some more help with, especially the free safety group. But who knows if that's going to actually happen at all. That'll be up to Ballard before the season starts. But nevertheless, outside of Julian Blackmon, I don't really have a lot of confidence in this group.
Which is exactly why it's so bizarre that Chris Ballard's acting the way he is with the safety room, where he's not doing anything. He literally hasn't touched it. And Derek, I mean, you can talk about the pass rush, which we have, but I just sit here and I say, if you're Chris Ballard and you watched what happened in that Houston game and you didn't do anything, you don't be surprised if it comes back to bite you in the butt, and your defense is struggling because you don't have consistency at safety. And so it's one of those things where obviously he very much believes in his young safeties. And you know what? It worked out for the offensive line, but I guess he's going to have to see unless there's a move coming between now and the regular season. But if it ends up blowing up in his face, he's going to have nobody to blame but himself for being, frankly, negligent when it comes to the safety room. But hopefully a guy like Nick Cross or Rodney Thomas steps it up and takes it and really is, proves that, this is what the Colts need and really proves they can be the long-term starter when it comes to that safety room. So I agree with you. I kind of think Chris Ballard's being pretty headstrong when it comes to this kind of. We've seen him do this before where kind of a blind belief. I do think this is kind of the definition, especially at free safety, when it comes to kind of blind belief in a player, right? Because we haven't seen anybody step it up, and we're entering year number 3 now, and nobody has stepped up yet. So I don't know, man. This is one of those positions, if I have any criticism, it's Chris Ballard being Chris Ballard, ignoring a clear, obvious need. But again, I want to be wrong. I want to be proven wrong here when it comes to the safety room, but I don't disagree with you at all. It's definitely the room I'm the least confident in when it comes to really the entire team, if you're talking about it. So I guess we'll have to see on that, man.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's dive in to this room. You obviously mentioned Julian Blackmon, so we need to probably start there. I mean, 25 years old, Derek. The Colts obviously re-signed him on a 1-year deal. Julian Blackmon, of course, the 3rd-round pick in 2020 from the Indianapolis Colts, and definitely a player that has had some really good moments with them, has made some really good plays for the Indianapolis Colts, but his biggest thing has been he just hasn't been on the field nearly enough, at this point to be 100% slam dunk, long-term type of guy when it comes to the future at strong safety. Now, obviously, we know last year he had his finest season as a pro when he switched from free safety to strong and looked really confident back there. And so if Julian Blackmon can stay healthy, Derek, I think there's no doubt in my mind that he can be a really good player, a really good safety, and can prove to the Colts that he deserves a long-term extension after his contract is up this next offseason.
Yeah, no doubt. Julian Blackmon, I have no doubts that Julian Blackmon can be the long-term solution at safety for the Indianapolis Colts. He has shown it ever since he got drafted out of Utah. he has been the guy, and he's been really good from the moment he stepped on the football field. The issue you have is just like a lot of other people on this roster, it's staying healthy at the most important times. And, some players deal with it, and, that happens a lot. But in the biggest of moments, especially last year, Cody, I mean, Julian Blackmon was healthy for the first 14 games, and then the final 3 games that we really needed you the most, you weren't there. You weren't able to stick around. So, it has become a thing where, the Colts are saying like, hey, the safety room, it's already not in a spot where we really like it. And so we're not willing to throw around a crap ton of money to someone that we're not entirely sure is going to continue to stay consistently available. And as long as that is the case, they're going to have to, Julian Blackmon's going to have to figure that out, because ultimately his next contract is going to depend on whether or not he plays and plays in the biggest moments. But if we can get past that and we can actually see him play all this time, then Julian Blackmon has every inclination to be a really great safety in this league moving forward. And I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, and again, he has played far and away the best safety last year. He played the best out of anybody. I don't think it was even close. It was by a country mile at that point. Like, he was just on another level. Now, was he a top 5 safety? I don't think so. But Derek, he provided some consistency, obviously some veteran leadership, and some communication as well, which I think is definitely important considering how young the Colts are at safety. And, it was very obvious when he went out and he missed the remainder of that regular season, like, the Colts safety room suffered. And so if JB can stay healthy, I mean, I have no doubt that this Colts defense will be better for it. Certainly we'll know what's going on a little bit more when it comes to their communication, their responsibilities, things like that. So, yeah, the biggest thing is, though, he's got to stay healthy. And history will tell you at this point, Julian Blackmon's likely not going to play in 17 games. So you got to kind of figure that out. What's going to be the kind of the next step? And obviously the Colts didn't do anything, so I don't really know what their plan is when it comes to that. But in the event that he does go down, you do have a guy who stepped in last year. And, while he wasn't perfect and wasn't great, I thought he was serviceable enough. And of course, I'm talking about Ronnie Harrison Jr., who was a linebacker, played some linebacker for you and then played some safety for you. So he's kind of a little bit of everything. He can play a little bit of both, which is kind of interesting. But when it comes to him, Derek, and when you're looking at what he can provide potentially as kind of that backup safety, what are your thoughts on Ronnie Harrison Jr. as kind of that primary backup strong safety to Julian Blackmon?
Yeah, Ronnie Harrison, kind of came into the fold at the end of last year because of just the need to try to find another safety that could fill the hole from which Nick Cross and Rodney Thomas weren't filling. And Ronnie Harrison, had a couple of pretty good plays last year. If I'm not mistaken, had an interception against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, actually had a fumble recovery for a touchdown in the Bengals game, which unfortunately we just got the absolute mess kicked out of us. But other than that, I mean, Ronnie Harrison has had a couple of big plays here throughout. So, I mean, do we see him? Yeah, do we see him or Julian end up shifting over at some point, because of that free safety position? Or does Ronnie Harrison stay? I'm not entirely sure. But Ronnie Harrison definitely last year, say what you want about the consistency of it, at least he made some plays, which I think is more than we can say for guys like Rodney Thomas and Nick Cross. So at the end of the day, if you're going to give me a few plays here and there, that's fine. At least gives me something to get excited.
Well, we'll see on that. I don't think he would make the transition to free safety, though, because the guy was playing linebacker. So I don't really think coverage is necessarily always his strong suit. I mean, I think he's good for a linebacker, but yeah, if anybody's going to free safety, it's probably JB, if I'm being honest. But yeah, when it comes to him, though, I think he provides some quality backup minutes for you, and that's what you're looking for.
As we said, guys, today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Now, what is Prize Picks? Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Instead of battling against thousands of other players across platforms, you're basically picking 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're choosing more or less on those stat projections to be able to watch those winnings roll in. It's very easy. Do you guys want to play along at some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and UFC fighter Sugar Sean O'Malley? Well, if you guys sign up today, you can find the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view the entries of some of the biggest names on the platform and be a part of that as well. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 just like that with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Like a lot of other things, guys, they also offer injury insurance, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if someone exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays live. So it's great bounce back for that one. What I love about the app as well, guys, is it's not just sports like NBA, NHL, football, and tennis, and baseball, and all these other things, but there's also a lot of others that go into it as well. If you like to place entries on video game situations like Call of Duty, CS2, Apex, if that's something that appeals to you, there's a wide variety of sports and video games and everything else that you can place entries on. And I love how expansive it is. Even just looking at the NBA, there's entries you can make with turnovers, with points. You can do combo deals, dunks, field goals attempted, all of these different things. So there's just so many different ways to make money off of these entries. Be sure to download the app today and use code BTJ for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code BTJ for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, it's sponsored by Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
But we got to talk about the free safety position. Nick Cross. Derek, I disagree with what you said about Nick Cross not making plays because he did have some moments last year. I think specifically that Pittsburgh game. And there was a couple weeks in a row where Nick Cross was really playing high-level football. Now, the inconsistency is the biggest thing when it comes to Nick Cross because we've seen him make some really like, oh, my goodness, this guy's going to be a future all-pro, into sometimes he just, can't read a defense or can't read an offense, and, he gets lost and miscommunication, things like that happens, right? So, but Nick Cross certainly out of probably all the free safeties has the best shot here, I think, still to potentially make something and be a long-term piece for this team. But again, this is year 3 for him. First year he was benched. Last year he came in and played, but he was inconsistent. So what does year 3 hold for a player like Nick Cross, who obviously the Indianapolis Colts, they loved him. They traded up because they thought, if he goes back into the draft next year, he's a second rounder, right? So like, what does it hold for Nick Cross, who the Colts obviously really believe in? Can he put it together and be that free safety of the future and make the comment we said earlier look completely ridiculous, right? Like, what does he have to do, Derek, in your mind, in order to cement himself as a long-term piece?
He has to become more consistent, and he has to not get beat on some of these pass protection plays that happen for this team. I think the problem is, Cody, and what we're seeing from what Nick Cross was like at Maryland to what he is now, it shows an understanding of why Nick Cross was really good when he was a limited participant in the defense now versus trying to be a full-time starter. Because when you had him coming off the bench and certain 3 safety packages that the Indianapolis Colts like to use from time to time, Nick Cross really filled that role very well because there were very specific. Actually, you know what? It wasn't even very specific. It was more freelance Nick Cross do as you please sort of situations where he was able to utilize his athleticism to make plays happen. But the problem is now is when you had him as a full-time starter and he had to be in not just for 10% or 15% of the defensive plays, now he's in every snap. There's those 2 or 3 times when Nick Cross has a lapse in understanding where he needs to be and who he needs to be looking at, and it costs the Indianapolis Colts a lot of plays that result in huge gains or touchdowns for opposing offenses. Particularly over the last 2 years, it's been against the Texans. I'm pretty sure at this point, Nick Cross has helped give 3 touchdowns by himself to the Houston Texans over the last 2 seasons playing against them. So, this is a kid that is still learning, still trying to grasp things like that. But he's got such great athletic ability, Cody, and it's just one of those things where you cannot allow yourself to get beat the way that he does. It has to get better because look, Nick Cross in a majority of the time does very good as a safety, but it's not always about being okay and being good in those certain circumstances. It takes only 1 or 2 plays in an NFL game for you to completely mess up and then be the reason why an opposing offense scores a touchdown on you, and that can alter the course of a game. And unfortunately, Nick Cross has been at the forefront of a lot of those different types of issues. And he is better served right now as a guy in particular circumstances, comes out in particular sets to do certain things. He's not a full-time starter yet. And I'm really hoping this year, if he is the free safety to start the year, I really hope that he has gotten better and he's gone back to the film room and is diving into it. Because if not, we're going to have another rough start to this year at free safety.
We'll see. We'll see on that. I mean, to be fair to Nick Cross, last year was his first full year playing safety. I mean, he really didn't play a whole lot in his rookie season. But the other guy who did play a lot, but then got benched, Rodney Thomas, who really struggled last year after having a really surprising breakout rookie year. I mean, he's a guy talking about getting beat by the Texans. I mean, he gave the Colts the number 4 overall pick because of his lapse in judgment, right? And ever since then, it's just been downhill for Rodney Thomas. And I mean, this kid still has ability, though. I mean, even though he was a 7th-round pick, I mean, he's got the athletic ability just like Nick Cross. But I mean, he was just so bad, virtually unplayable last year for the Colts. And I don't really know what his role is going to be, Derek, but I think if you're choosing between the two, you'd rather have Nick Cross starting over him because it was bad last year for Rodney Thomas. Bad.
Yeah, he had a couple of good plays last year, but you're right. A lot of different times, just as bad as Nick Cross, if not worse. He had times where he was just completely out of the realm of being able to make a play. And a lot of times also his tackling also took a slight bit of a hit too. I didn't quite understand how it got to be so bad for him there. I mean, his total number of tackles definitely went down. Just wasn't quite the same player that we saw his rookie year. Because you're right, there wasn't a lot of expectation for him in 2022. But then he went in there and, he had 4 interceptions. He looked like he belonged as part of the unit. So there was a lot of good things to like about Rodney Thomas and hope that he was going to take that jump, but he took the slump instead. I don't know. Maybe there's a resurgence this year, but I mean, there's going to have to be if Rodney Thomas wants a chance to try to be a part of this Colts unit for the long term.
Yeah, and then obviously you have some other guys, which I mean, pretty much been practice squad guys at this point. Trevor Denbow, who hasn't really done anything. Michael Tootsie as well, who is a rookie this year, undrafted rookie. And then you got some other guys, listed as technically as safeties, Kendall Brooks and Marcel Dabo. So really, Derek, there's not. I mean, when you look at it, there's not a lot of guys up front that you feel good, but even like in the depth standpoint, it's not good. It's really not
Yeah.
good. So I'm not quite sure what the Colts plan is, but I do know if they run it out and it's a disaster, we'll know exactly why, because we've been talking about it for months now, how this safety room, it really lacks something. I mean, you would think, even just from a depth standpoint, you'd want to add somebody in there. But the Indianapolis Colts haven't. And obviously, Daniel Scott missing the entirety of the season again, that really hurts. So I don't really know, man. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens between now and the regular season, because maybe it gets exposed during training camp and the Colts decide, okay, we need to make a call here to Quandre Diggs or Justin Simmons or somebody like that. I'm not sure, man, but I do know that this one has me scratching my head a little bit on what the Colts plan is here, because it doesn't seem very wise while what they're doing right now with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is definitely one of the worst position groups out there right now, with not a lot of experience and a lot of prayer that it gets better. We'll see if the Colts do make a move during training camp to bring some veteran in still. If not, we got to pray that these guys just get better. That's pretty much all you can ask for at this point.
Yep. So, guys, let us know your thoughts here on the safety room for the Indianapolis Colts. Do you feel the way we do about it, or do you feel a little more confident? Do you feel more like Chris Ballard feels about it right now? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. But, guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, guys, go Colts.